Okay, welcome back. So in this video, we're just going to go through exporting our renders from Maya or Max or whatever you're using and into Photoshop. We're just going to do a little bit of editing and that'll be it. So this render here, it's a pretty low quality render. Just to speed up time, I've cranked up the AA so we can get some nice anti-aliasing and reduce the diffuse specular transmission SS and volume indirect right down to make it quick. But for yours, you should put it somewhere around 6 for the AA and at least 3 for all of these ones here. And that should give you a pretty good result. The render times are going to be a lot longer if you do that, but that's probably the sweet spot in my opinion. Somewhere around 6 and 3 for these guys here. Any more, and then you're probably overkilling a little bit, and it would just take a very, very long time to render. Okay, so once your render is done, so I'll bring it over here. What you want to do is save it out. Now, there's two things you can do to save it out. So you can just save image, which this way is fine. So you can save it as a JPEG, and it should look exactly or very close to this. Now, the way that I would do it would be to save a multi-layer EXR. So this will allow you to save multi-layers. So basically in your AOVs, if you have a few in here, which I do, but I didn't do it for this one, it should come up in your layers essentially. And you can easily play around with them and use them to edit the image further. Now, if you aren't using that, well, it's rendering again. If you aren't using that, so different AOVs, then you still probably want to do it this way anyways, because we can get a nice, clean alpha map from this method. So, and it'll be a very high quality image as well. So the JPEGs and all those other images aren't as high quality. So we want to work with the highest quality image, do our edits, and then compress them if we need to. So I'll just wait for this to finish. I might just pause the video and I'll come back until when it's done. Okay, so that's done. So I'm just going to save this out. So File, Save Multi-Layer EXR, and I'll just save that to this spot here. And I'll see you guys in Photoshop. So you can do this in any software. You can see that I've played around with it, different types of looks. But I'm using Photoshop for this one just because we have it at uni. I've got to let you know now, I don't actually use Photoshop. I use Affinity for all my sort of Photoshop type stuff, but it's going to be the same inside any sort of image editing software, really. So I'm going to open this up, and you're going to get two options. So as transparency, so alpha channel data as transparency, or as an alpha channel. So this will bring it in, and you can use the alpha channel to make the background transparent or change the background color. This will come in with the background already transparent. So I'm going to pick this one here. Now your render AA should be this part here. So your anti-aliasing. So if you're getting a lot of jaggedy bits here, then you might need to increase the anti-aliasing a little bit. This is fairly normal to have some because we're working with pixels, of course. But if it's a bit too jaggedy and it's just not looking nice, then you probably want to increase that. I'm just going to get rid of the pixel grid. So this part here, right, that's looks pretty good. So you probably notice one thing as we first import this EXR is that it looks different. So if I bring up the Maya version, I'll pause this, you can see that it is different to our Photoshop version. guess I can't have that up twice. Here we go. So you can see it is different. And that's because the color space in Photoshop is different to our Maya render scene. So we're working with a ACES color space here, and this is working with a like an Adobe sRGB or something like that. So that's an easy fix. All we need to do is just the quickest way is to import a lookup table. So I'll link one in Canvas for you to apply. Now what we're going to do here, and my screen sort of is getting a bit cut off with the recording stuff down here, but what I'm going to do is apply this lookup table. And so we can go to the adjustments and find color lookup and press this one here, so the top one, and then go to load 3D LUT. So LUT is a short way of saying it. Again, I'm going to link this into Canvas so you can just download it, and I'll credit the person that made this, but we can just load this in, and then it looks pretty close. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same, but it's pretty close to the render. Just a little bit of adjustment, I think. So let's jump into here and let's just do a little bit. So the color's okay. It's not as close as I want it to be, but let's just do a little bit of editing. So I'm gonna okay this, and what I'm gonna do is just merge these two layers together, but still keep these layers. So I'm gonna press Control Shift Alt E with the lookup table selected. It's going to merge everything for me, but it's also going to give us a copy. So up in the toolbar here, I can change it from 32-bit to 16 or 8-bit. Let's just go 16-bit for now, and don't merge. This basically will allow us to do more to it because it's too high quality for us to work with. Okay, so with this transparent background, we can put in a. Just gonna move this over here. Sorry guys, my recording stuff is right here in front of these buttons. So I've got to move this over. I'm gonna put a new layer and put that behind. And then over here on this vertical toolbar, you can pick this paint bucket. And then you can just pick whatever color you want. And this can be the background for your creature. You can pick like a simple gray, or if you want to make it a little bit warmer, you can bring in a little bit of a warm color like that. So you can see it's not just a solid gray. I think I might go a little bit whiter. Maybe something like that. And then with this, we can just do some basic color editing. So what I normally do is come up to the edit image section or images and just test out these auto tones, contrast, and color just to see if it gives me a nice look. And generally, for the most part, it does. So obviously that one's no good. So I'm just going to press Control Z. But I'm pretty happy with the first couple of edits. So these first two seem to have done a pretty good job. Now, there's a few things we can do here. And we can just jump down to the adjustments. And then we can apply a few things. So let's do a hue saturation. And then we can come into here and muck around with the saturation and hue. So if we want it to be a bit more saturated, we can do that. Just bump that up a bit. Want it to be a bit brighter, we can do that, although I'll add another adjustments to this. If you want to change the color, you can. So if you want to make him blue or something, you can do that. But I'm going to leave that as is. And the adjustments that we're going to do are very minor sort of things. We're not going to go in and change it all up. Unless you want to, you can do that. The next one I normally do is go into the levels and play around with the crunching the blacks. So making that a bit brighter so we can have a bit of brighter area here, or crunching the whites, bring that down, or working with the midpoints. So it's up to you what you want to do for your edit. I think for this one I want to go a little bit brighter and have it a bit more contrasty in the scene. But again, it's up to you what you want to do with this. Okay, and normally I just come through and just play around with all of these things. So then you can just do a color balance, and you can just work with the midtones, shadows, or highlights. So I normally just go through each and just see what this is going to do. So we can just put a little bit more reds in there. Maybe a touch of green. A little bit of yellow. Then go to the shadows and then sort of do the same as well. Okay, and highlights. See what that does. I think I want a little bit more, a little bit of blues in there for the highlights. A little bit of magenta. And touch of blue in there. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. What we can do with these guys is we can come into here, and I'm being cut off as well, so I'm going to put this up top. Let's press this button, and this will make it so it only applies to the layer underneath. So we can have this nice color that we picked earlier stay the same. Let's see how it's looking. So I'm pretty happy with that so far. You can always go back into these things and mess around with it. Maybe I might mess with the mid-tones a little bit. I kind of like the way it was before. I might even push that a little bit more. Just a little bit. It's getting a bit too much along the belly here, but I like the way it looks. And that's kind of it. Like, there's a lot of things you can do down here. There's a lot that you can sort of mess around with, but towards the end, I normally do select the topmost layer, press Control Shift Alt E to duplicate everything and merge it, and then come into filters and then raw camera filters, and this would just give us a more sort of yeah, so it gives us just all our filters to sort of work with. So we can come into here and play around with this. There's an auto button or black and white. It's up to you what you want to do. But we can come into here and just play around with these settings all in one spot. What I like to do is just grab these sliders and bring it all the way to the right, all the way to the left, just to see what it does. And then make a decision. So I kind of like having strong highlights with this one, but maybe it was a bit too strong. So I might drop it down just a little bit. Shadows. That kind of looks cool. So maybe we'll go up a little bit with that. I like that. And the whites, blacks, I'm pretty happy with the crunching that we did earlier. You know, you're sort of more or less going through the same thing. I think Yeah, maybe a little bit on the cooler side. Okay, and then you can work through all of these effects. Just work your way through all the way down. So you want to make it a bit more contrasty in the textures. You can do that quite easily here. You can see it makes things pop out a lot more. But just a little bit for me, I think maybe around here. And I won't go through all of these, but there's a few that you definitely want to go through. So like color grading, definitely color mixer, curves. So you want to go through lights, color, effects, curves, color mixer, color grading, details. If you want to reduce some details, uh, like some noise, then yes. But normally it should be pretty good. It shouldn't be a need to reduce the noise unless you did a really quick render and you have to do a bit of a noise reduction. Vignetting, yes, let's put a bit of vignetting in there so we can get these darkenings of the corner. Distortion, if we wanted to add like a lens effect, so something like from a camera, we can add like a little bit there. But I'm not going to do that. So let's do that. These optics section, if you want to make it look like it's shot from like a old, not an old, but a camera, then you can do that. You'll see this a lot in older cameras, but defringing is if I can zoom in, you'll see that on the edges here. So um, so if I increase this, you can see that change on the edge. And the more defringing, you'll get like a more older or analog sort of camera look. So a little bit is always nice. It just makes it look a little bit more believable. Lens blur, if you want to do a bit of lens blurring, you can do that in here. I'm just going to leave it though. And calibration, so I'm happy with that as is. Then you can go to these next areas. We don't want to do any of that. If we want to do any spot healings around here, whoops. So let's see. I normally do this in the other view, to be honest, but you can do this here. And that's kind of it. That's all I really do for this section. Mainly just going through these sort of camera areas. Yeah, I don't really want to mask anything, so we'll just leave it as that. Exit tour. So just press OK when you're happy, and that should change. And then you can toggle this on and off to see the changes that you made, and I'm happy with those changes. So subtle changes, but works really well. Now, if your model has rendered out with some artifacting, which it probably would have some, which is okay. So just analyze the model itself. This is a pretty low quality render, so it's not going to look as nice as it could, but let's just say there is something like up here. Like there's a sort of line here. You can see that more when you zoom out. It almost looks like a seam from the UVs. You can come into here on the vertical toolbar and you can use this sort of spot removal brush. And you can just sort of click on this area. Oh, I got no space on my computer. But you can click on this and then it should heal that up and get rid of it. Let's see if I can use this one. So this one here, you can sort of highlight a certain area and then sample an area that's close by and it will sort of blend it together. Okay. no space on my computer, so I won't be able to save this properly. So I'll stop this video. That's pretty much it, right? So all you got to do is just come into here and just do a little bit of a tidy up and make it a bit presentable. With this method, you have the background gone, so you can come into here uh, and and before we actually merged it together, sorry, uh, you can paint like some shadows on the ground as well.